And a good morning to you. Welcome to Community Voices. I am your host, Ron Holland. If embarrassment and stigma helps to undermine adults from addressing mental wellness, just imagine the anxiety adolescents and teenagers endure when confronted with such challenges, especially where the twin towers of dread are concerned. And I'm talking about peer pressure and self-esteem. With World Mental Health Day only weeks away, a sharp focus on the mental health of our young folks requires significant attention. I am so delighted that Living Waters Incorporated is prioritizing the voices of our young people in the critical area of mental wellness. Joining me in the studio this morning is Pastor Joseph Graham with Living Waters Incorporated, and I am delighted that he is seeing our young people conquer every scintilla of fear regarding mental illness. Pastor Graham, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, man. I'm excited to be here. We had a great time last time getting ready for the Black Youth Wellness Summit, and now we're here building off of what we started last year.
Absolutely. Our young folks are facing an enormous challenge, and as I was preparing for the show, I had an opportunity to look at some alarming stats that indicate that Black youth experience an enormously high risk for anxiety and depression, and if we're talking about suicide, my God, our young people are 36% higher risk than other ethnic groups. What is happening with our young folks?
So it is, to me, definitely a reflection of the residue of, not the residue, but the impact of oppression, the impact of a flight or fight mentality, meaning we as a people have real reasons why we don't trust certain healthcare agencies and professionals because of different things that have happened in the past.
Yeah.
But as a consequence, we don't get the help that we need, especially in the area of mental health. And a lot of times in our effort to try to make do, we end up canceling out support that we actually need. And one thing that I always say is that the skeletons in the closets of our parents become the imaginary friends that our children play with. And so the struggles that we see our children having are reflection and residue of the things, unfinished and unhealed issues of their mothers and fathers.
You know, for years, there was this fallacy that, for instance, suicide was exclusively a white issue, but it has wormed its way into our community. Talk a little bit about that, because we always thought, nah, those are white folks' problems.
Yeah, exactly. And that right there is an example of how we as a people have tried to survive and avoid the support that we need. Because the reality is all human beings battle with mental health issues. But from a cultural standpoint, we couldn't trust certain agencies.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the reasons why we considered it white people stuff. So it wasn't born totally out of fallacy. We had real reason not to trust it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when we look at how we self-medicated in a way where Sunday school teachers, sometimes preachers, sometimes that aunt that just made us feel good when we went over and she would make up them favorite biscuits and cake, that became our therapy. But when we're realizing we still need a professional who has studied the art of how the mind works and the impact on behavior to support us and help us.
So do you think that the church was an impediment to getting the help that we need?
Because the church is not a monolithic entity, we know very clearly historically, and historians have recorded, there's certain survival that would not have taken place if it had not been for the Black church. Let's be clear. Certain basic and practical needs and social and emotional comfort would not have taken place if it wasn't for the Black church. But at the same time, we also have learned to use religion as a means to hide from our trauma. And so we use what I call denial and deflection to avoid dealing with real issues. So when it gets hard, we just say, Jesus paid it all. And that's just a religious way of saying, shut up, mind your business, and leave me alone.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at peer pressure and self-esteem, growing up, we all had we had to endure some measure of that issue. For girls not being pretty enough, for boys not being handsome enough. And if you add skin tone and skin color to that, and you remember the movie movie School Days?
Oh, yeah.
Both of us are, we are telling our age
We're
now.
seasoned.
We're seasoned.
Marinated well.
But there was this battle, for instance, between light and dark skin and kinky hair and straight hair. When we were growing up, how it played a role in our self-esteem. I can only imagine what's happening with our young folks today.
With that being said, not only do we know that impacted our people, whether they were light or dark, because if you really listen, there's trauma on both sides of that reality.
Yeah.
But imagine the world today where our young people, where social media, where we at least had the liberty of doing stuff and maybe making a mistake or being made a fool of, and it's limited to who is there. And of course, stories get stretched out as get spread out, but there isn't footage. We live in a time frame. If a child does something embarrassing, it's in the cloud and it's recorded.
Yeah.
It is now there for eternity. So that's a psychological pressure that our generation can't comprehend, that this generation is battling, brother.
Yeah. To your point, the number of people using social media is over 5.7 billion people worldwide, with the average user accessing 6.7 social media platforms on a monthly basis. So with that being said, social media is exacerbating this issue.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Social media is destroying people's ability to be social. Look at that.
Yeah.
Social media is eroding and destroying people's ability to operate one human being to another in real time in a natural, organic sense. Technology has replaced organic connection. And so we have a generation of folks who don't really know how to communicate with one another and don't really know how to identify with themselves, because they're constantly measured against who's the likes, the comments, and everything else about who they are. They don't have enough sacred space to just get to know themselves and be at peace with whoever they are.
That is reflected in, for instance, if you're going out to dinner with your spouse or you're going out to dinner with your children especially, the first thing you do, and I would challenge everyone listening to this conversation this morning, go to a restaurant and just put your phone down and just peer across the restaurant and see how many heads are bowed down looking into an app or a cell phone and actually being on social media. That is a detriment to us, and it really is impacting us on a social level.
Yes, it is. It is. And that's why this 2024 Youth Mental Wellness Summit is so important, man, because, we're finding out that I think 1 out of 5 youth are actually battling with mental disorders between the ages of 12 and 17. And what's happening is we've got to create a space where, and that's what this conference is about, creating safe spaces for young voices to be heard so we can hear them, what they're going through. But watch this. Not only do we need to create the space so we can hear them, we need to actually create the space to take them out of this world of where they're being navigated through algorithms on what to think, believe, and feel. Even the conduct of how we're using, because this event is 100% remote. But even how we're using it is trying to introduce a paradigm shift to say, if you're going to use technology, use it to communicate what's going on with you so we can provide healing, instead of just being stuck, being navigated by algorithm that is manipulating your life.
To your point, in the United States, 51.2% of social media users are female, while the remaining 48.8% are male, compared with a global average of 46.6 for female and 53.4 for male, with the average length of time being on social media 2 hours a day. That's a lot of time to sulk over what others have, what you don't have, how others appear, the money, the finances, the cars, the houses. That's too much on young folks these days.
Yes, it is. And then when you're introducing this level of technology at a young age, you're creating a generation of people that are addicted to devices and not real relationships. And we're coming up fast on young generation of people who actually don't know and have not experienced natural social connection. They don't even know what that is. And so you have people who may desire connection, but they've already, from the time they were a baby or young, created this relationship with this device. And so they don't know the difference between what is attention and intentions. When you're sitting up there on social media or posting stuff, you're getting attention, but that doesn't mean that people's intentions towards you are good. And this generation is in a place where we don't necessarily know the difference.
I just remember growing up, and particularly when I think about relationships, you know, my wife and I, we've been together for 30 plus years. And I remember particularly those younger days, and we're duplicating that these days as well. Think about those days when you just took a walk in the park. It was just you, your spouse or your significant other, and the stars and the atmosphere, the ambiance of being out by the lake and all of that. Now what we're seeing again are folks trying to duplicate that, but they have the added specter of that cell phone in their hand. That's crazy to me.
Exactly. So in the beginning, leaning on a device to introduce them to a natural phenomenon.
That is crazy. Well, you know, Pastor, one of the most fascinating things I read about this issue is how struggles with mental health presents differently in Black children, and often the manifestation of some form of mental illness is misinterpreted, particularly in school, as behavior problems rather than trauma or depression or anxiety. Your thoughts?
It's a perfect storm in a bad way. See, this country, unfortunately, historically has a lack of sympathy and care for Black life, for Black bodies. And research shows that whether the staff is white or Black students are penalized more than all other students, even for the same grievances or issues, even if the staff is diverse. So in the minds of Blacks, whites, and others, in the psychology of Americans, when it comes to Black life, it just simply doesn't matter as much. So you compound that to mental issues. Somehow Johnny had a bad day, but Hakeem is a bad kid. And they may do the same exact thing. And it's those kind of discussions that we want to dive into this summit. Let's be clear. Not only are we inviting the youth to talk, but we're inviting the practitioners and educators to be present to listen. And right now we need more and more schools to register for this event so they can create environments where they can have it set up in their classrooms and have students come in and listen to the panelists talk about various different things. And more than anything, the young people to say what's on their mind and ask questions and kind of tell us what they're experiencing so that we can properly respond.
You know, you keep hearkening back to the professionals in this space. And I'm wondering, how do we get more professionals in this space that look like you and I? Because I think the stats are extraordinarily low. I think it's like 5.1% of Black therapists and psychologists as opposed to 60-something% of whites. So how do we get more people in this space?
One of the ways to do that is for our community to be honest about decreasing the stigma of mental health. And allowing folks to be safe. There is such a marker of just disdainment put upon people historically in our community. If you're going to see a psychologist, you're going to see a counselor, you must be crazy. And nobody wants to be deemed as crazy. Meanwhile, folks suffer in silence. And so we've got to be able to say, look, let's be real about what we're struggling with. And I've learned that when we as adults become more transparent, then our children will. But in terms of what you're saying about the profession, the more we as adults are honest about that, the more I think that people have the aptitude to do or the desire to do that counseling, they'll get into the field. Because nobody wants to get into a field and they don't feel like they're going to have any clientele to help. But I honestly think one of the spinoffs from COVID exposed the mental health and breakdown of the entire world, regardless of race and ethnicity or social economic status. So I believe spinning off of that, we do have a rise of African Americans getting into the field of counseling, and we need to keep encouraging. But we got to utilize the service. If we're utilizing the service, the practice will grow.
In the interest of full transparency, I do want our listeners to know that, you know, prior to coming on the air, I shared with you regarding my mom mom's passing, and then, of course, 3 months later, my dad passing. And, of course, I ended up having to get therapy. And it's one of those things where you recognize that I cannot solve this issue on my own, that there needs to be an outside entity who has skin in the game with regard to my wellness, but who can look at it objectively and say, you know what, these are the steps that you need to take to get well again. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Oh, man, let me tell you something. And I really appreciate your transparency and the similar journey we've had dealing with that loss. And I believe that it's so important for even the moment that you just had, in expressing the struggle and the fact that you went and got help and it helped, brother.
Yes, sir.
I know for me just saying that out loud, whoever the folks are that look up to you, whoever the folks are to respect you, you just planted a seed for them to go seek help because you did.
Yes, sir.
And that's really a each one teach one mentality. And we got to realize that no matter what we say to our children, they will repeat what we do.
That's right.
They do what we do, not just what we say. And that right there, brother, is saving lives. Just like you, and it's ironic that the connection between us. It was October 10th that my mom was told she had 3 months to live, brother. And so this time of the year, and the fact that this event is on October 10th, between 9 and 11, y'all, but October 10th means something to me. But what I've learned is when we get honest and say, you said it so perfectly, I needed help. I couldn't do this on my own.
That's right.
How many times have we heard it takes a village to raise a child? Well, guess what? It takes a village to sustain our adulthood. We need one another.
That's right. Yes, sir. Yes,
and
sir.
so the more we're honest about that, brother, it makes young people say, well, let me go get some help too.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Well, let's get to the upcoming 2024 Youth Mental Wellness Summit taking place again on October 10th. Walk us through the particulars of this event.
So the event is on a Thursday. It's from 9 to 11. And is 100% remote. And it's one of those things, it's spinning off of the success of the 2023 Black Youth Wellness Summit we did last year at the Du Bois Center on the UNC Charlotte campus. And also a spinoff of an event that we had called Let's Talk Youth Mental Health event. And so this event is going to be 100% remote. When we first started, we think it's going to be a few schools that we connect with in Mecklenburg County. Nah, bro. We have several schools that have already signed up. We have a York County school that has signed up. And do you not know that we have schools in Ghana that have signed up? So this event has now become international. And we are in need of schools to register. The event is free, first of all. The first 100 students who sign up, they get gift bags and things of that nature. But we need schools to sign up so that the classrooms can be set up. And there's going to be facilitators who are licensed professionals and counselors that are going to be there. And it is now spread to we're inviting universities and colleges to be a part of it. And we're inviting student organizations because we're aiming at the ages of 14 to 21 as our target. So middle school, high school, college, and universities, we want them to tune in, register, and then we have Ohavia Phillips, who is a social media influencer. She's the host and moderator. And then we have a group of panelists that include a high school student, that includes a state representative, a licensed counselor, and various different people. And they're going to be there to kind of talk from their perspective, but more than anything, for the students to ask questions and for the students to say what's on their mind. So imagine students from Ghana, students from Mecklenburg County, students from the surrounding counties, Cabarrus, York, talking about what they're going through. We're even reaching out to the schools that have had school shootings and things of that nature. We're calling them into the space because we need healing, brother.
Yeah. And I take it this is a no-holds-barred conversation, that everything is on the table.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it is. We're actually having students to do poetry and song that speaks to what are you going through. It's about, and we're inviting practitioners to come in to do more listening. To hear. That's why we say creating safe spaces. Why do we say safe spaces? Because social media has made us realize that even though the world is watching, it ain't safe, brother. This world will raise you up one day, tear you down the next. But this right here is a safe space. What do we say? For young voices to be heard, because they don't always feel like they're in a safe environment to speak their mind. And that is this space.
And I'm wondering, in terms of the success of this summit, how will you gauge the success? What does it look like 5 months from now, maybe a year from now, in terms of follow-up?
That's the Excellent question, brother. One thing that Living Waters has done very successfully, and they've been operating over 20 years, Living Waters is about tending to the needs to help the people be better. And the way we do that is by building, we're an independent organization that links with faith-based groups to collaborate with policymakers, with educators, social service agencies, to close the gaps that people are falling through in society when it comes to disparities and inequities. And so what we do is we throw these events and we invite folks that usually operate in isolation, but yet tending to the same community. Think about it. A social worker, a school teacher, a principal, a community organization, doctors, they're all dealing with the same community, but they don't often talk to each other about what's going on. So imagine being in a room where everybody that touches the lives of young people are hearing what things look like from their perspective, but more importantly, then the young person is in the room to tell you what they're going through, and we all get to see how we can better collectively serve the wellness of our children.
Absolutely. You know, we're about to close out, but one of the things that I'm excited about is giving people, particularly parents and school teachers and school faculty, the education they need to recognize when someone is actually devolving into some kind of crisis. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited. We're about to close. If any of our listeners would like to know a little bit more about the upcoming 2024 Youth Mental Wellness Summit taking place virtually on October 10th, or if they would like to know more about you personally, because you are absolutely phenomenal. Every time you come on this show, I feel like I need to pass over the microphone and just walk out the door. But if anyone would like to reach out to you, want to know a little bit more about the work of Living Waters, where should they go for the information?
So definitely go to livingwatersfa.com. You go to the website, all the information regarding the event can be found there. Registration is there. And I just wanted to make this point that after this event, we're building collaboration so that all the things that the young people express to us, there's a rollout plan for us to begin to attend to those needs, follow up. Because it's not just an event, but it's the kickoff of something special. But go to livingwatersfa.com. Please register as soon as possible. If you have any connections with any school, or you work for a school yourself, or you're a principal listening to this, please go ahead and register. Feel free to, when you go to the website, you see all of our contact information, but please get involved and spread the information to everyone that you can.
Absolutely. And just one additional question, because it's really important to me. If you recognize during the summit that someone does need help, what mechanism do you have in place to get that person or persons help immediately?
So what's beautiful is wherever the person is at, we're making a point that a counselor, a licensed counselor, is present. So in all the different locations, even remotely that we're talking about, the vision is that there's a licensed counselor there to respond in kind. And so we have a breakdown, an itinerary, and a kind of a flow of how facilitation needs to take place from each location. So one thing that's beautiful, that the founder of Living Waters, Elder Lawrence Barker Bey, as well as Joan Ben, the president, they are so extraordinary on being a stickler for detail to make sure that people are served and helped when we're having events like this.
Absolutely. Pastor Joseph Graham of Living Waters Incorporated, thank you so much for coming in to talk about this critically important information.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to see you, my brother.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'll wrap up the show. This is Community Voices with your host, Ron Holland. We'll be back in a moment. And welcome back to Community Voices. I'm your host, Ron Holland. I want to again thank Pastor Joseph Graham of Living Waters Incorporated for coming on to talk about the upcoming 2024 Youth Mental Wellness Summit, taking place virtually October 10th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. If you'd like additional information about the upcoming summit, log on to www.livingwatersfa.com. Listen, if you have any comments on today's show, please send me an email, ronholland@radio-1.com or ronholland25@yahoo.com. You can also catch me on Facebook, Instagram, Fanbase, and TikTok. It's Ron Holland across all 4 social media platforms. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's Community Voices. I'm your host, Ron Holland. We'll talk with you next week.